recall, back in 2014, the Obama administration's Department of Education installed school discipline guidelines, which attempted to suspend students of all racial groups at the same rate, even if there were more misbehavior among students of one race over students of another race. And in response to this, many school officials wound up adopting racial quotas so as to adhere to the new suspension rules, and some officials even gave Black and Hispanic students an extra review of their behavior and of their suspensions. But it did not do the same for students of other ethnicities. This, of course, resulted in several special considerations given to those students, Black and Hispanic, based on race. These quota attempts, however, were deemed unconstitutional. And when President Trump took office, his education department got rid of Obama's discipline and suspension guidelines altogether. But then last June, with the Biden administration, Obama's guidelines were back on the table. President Biden promised to revisit the issue with the aim of reinstating the Obama-era discipline and suspension guidelines. I'm Terry Gilbert. This is Timeline with Terry. Straight ahead, we'll discuss today's Timeline topic: school suspensions and critical race theory. Stick around.
The principles of liberty, freedom, and the tenets of our constitutional republic are under attack. That's why we are building freedomsquare.com. Freedomsquare.com, designed to unite freedom-loving Americans. Freedomsquare.com. Freedom lives here.
You're watching Conservative Television of America, working hard to stick socialism where the sun don't shine.
Welcome to Red Balloon, the nation's first and only free speech job site. I'm Andrew, the founder and CEO, and I'm excited you're here. I called this service Red Balloon because balloons help you fly, especially if you tie a ton of them to a lawn chair. A little bit dangerous, a lot bit fun, kind of like looking for a new job. The mission of Red Balloon is to connect employers who still love freedom and want employees who love freedom to the millions of Americans now searching for jobs today, where they won't have to look over their shoulders and constantly be worried about being canceled. There are over 10 million open jobs today, the most in history, people. It's kind of a moment. I always wanted to provide a job site focused on introducing employers to employees who will be focused on job performance and work and not politics. Come on, America. Stop canceling each other. Let's get to work. Visit redballoon.work. We'd love to have you.
Welcome back to Timeline with Terry, the show where we try to give you a deeper dive discussion on the hot and vexing issues of the day. I'm Terry Gilbert. Today's Timeline topic: school suspensions and CRT, or critical race theory. And just what do these two things have to do with each other? Why has the term critical race theory taken America by storm, it seems? Why are so many parents convinced that it is being taught in our public schools, and as a result, they are outraged by it? How is critical race theory even a factor in the recent governor's race in Virginia? And finally, we'll get to, what does this have to do with anti-racism, another new term in our common parlance? Is such a thing even possible? In studio with me is Donna Jackson. She is the Director of Membership Development for Project 21. So glad you came in to discuss this. Hi, Donna.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
All right, let's get right to it. I just gave a snapshot, or a real tiny little overview of what Obama's Department of Education attempted to do from about 2014 on, the suspension rules. And we know that that led to the determination by some school officials to have racial quotas. It was an easy way to say, well, if we're going to suspend a black student, we need to suspend a white student, et cetera. So they kind of looked to match the quota. And that, of course, is unconstitutional. It didn't go over very well. President Trump pulled it with his education secretary, Betsy DeVos, and did away with it. But last June, we were told, as kids are getting back into school, that the Biden administration would reinstate it. So my first question, Donna, is where are we at with it? Is it part of the administration's aim, or did they do this? Is it still on the table? Where?
Absolutely, it's still on the table.
Okay.
We actually submitted comments regarding this issue.
Oh, you did?
Yes, because what it does is make teachers actually racist. Because if I'm a teacher and I have a classroom and the classroom is out of control and I discipline a black kid that really needs the discipline, then I'm automatically going to be considered a racist because I need to make sure that I discipline a white kid first. And you can never institute discipline based upon a racial quota because it doesn't go to the heart of maybe why these disciplinary actions are needed. You know, in a lot of communities, you have some issues like drugs. You might have gangs. Mm-hmm. You might have a lot of single parents. Mm. There may be some other issues that are driving this, and frankly, most of those issues are a result of a lot of liberal policies that they put in place that have actually destroyed black communities, have destroyed black families. But now I'm going to just put a bandage on the bottom line issue and say, well, let's just make sure that the equal number of kids based upon a race, we discipline based upon that. Okay. And it doesn't get to the heart of the real problem.
I believe you. But what about the teacher that says, okay, I am not going to adhere to quotas. I'm going to try to really do the honest thing with my classroom. I got 30 kids. That's a lot. But right. Let's say I got 30 kids. I really want to suspend or at least discipline the kid that is really the one that acts up, has nothing to do with race. There are those teachers out there that say, I'm not going to go with the quota, I'm going to go with the behavior.
Well, there's too much intimidation for those teachers.
Really?
They can't act the way they really feel in terms of having control of their classroom.
Is that because Biden is going to put these guidelines?
Because Biden is already working towards putting those guidelines in place. And you have to think about how critical race theory plays into this. If you look at the 4 principles of critical race theory, the first one says that racism is normal, that racism is always happening. The second principle says that white people are born evil and they're irredeemable. That means every action, even if it looks like a good action, is actually there to create more racism.
So do I look like Satan? Am I irredeemable?
Well, imagine that. Like, you and I have different outfits on, okay? But because your outfit doesn't look like mine, because that's the way I see race, then you're somehow evil. How is that? That's the crazy
Nobody
thing.
Ever told me that. Talk about intimidation.
Because everything is racist. Everything is racist. And white people cannot be good. Then the assumption is we should still punish this white kid because he is unconsciously creating racism. He's doing something evil. So if I punish him, even though he never did a thing, I'm actually doing a good thing because his nature is evil.
Sort of balance out the playing field, level out the playing field.
That's not leveling out the playing field.
Well, I know, but that's the aim, right?
You know, they always say that critical race theory is about healing past wounds. No, it's not. It's about creating new wounds.
Let me get to critical race theory since we're in that now for our first segment. For those in the audience that don't quite know where this term came from, I did a little digging from Critical Theory with Karl Marx.
Right.
I'm sure you're aware, where he wrote critiques of the economy and society, created the manifesto, and came to believe that when one group is oppressed by another group, the oppressed must in turn, and will in turn, overthrow the oppressor. All right? Now, with critical race theory, that adjective that comes in between the words critical and theory, the assumption is that the oppressed is everybody, but especially Black Americans who are oppressed by white Americans, just so we're clear here with our audience. It's the whiteness that is the oppressor, correct? Do I have that right?
Yes.
And as such, white Americans, like you just said, Donna, need to be punished.
They need to be punished. Christianity is at the basis of that as well, because they think that because a individual has a certain skin tone, they can't be good, and that because a person has a certain skin tone, they can't be bad. So that's why when you saw riots destroying cities, $6 billion worth of destruction that happened. You saw some 20-something people get killed during the Black Lives Matter marches, but none of those people were punished like the individuals that participated in a protest on January 6th. Why? Because the color of their skin was black, and there's a assumption that because you are oppressed, you cannot be racist, you cannot be evil, and that everything you do is because you're reacting to the evil and the oppression that's been thrust upon you, and that is so wrong.
Okay, the thrust upon you. Let's analyze that a little bit. When I first heard the term, mostly last summer, I guess, systemic racism, and certainly after the death of George Floyd, I was thinking in my mind, systemic racism with police? There's police of Thai origin, and there's police of Irish origin and their heritage. There's Black police, there's Mexican police, there's Latino police. What do you mean systemic? And I was really searching, what does that mean? But upon looking closer at what BLM and CRT is pushing, it's the assumption that the whole system, with all of the pillars of justice, the pillars of our society, it's baked in because it's the white man, basically a male, that set up the system in the first place. The Europeans that came over, those whiteys, and therefore the only thing to do is overthrow the whole system, which of course, Donna, is impossible. Impossible.
The fourth principle of CRT is that objectivity, analytical thinking, laws, constitutions are all systemically racism.
Okay, so then we have to overthrow the whole thing, right?
So you have to overthrow the system. And here's the thing. Most Black people that are accosted by police officers, those police officers are Black. But guess what? If you are a Black person and you have an issue with another Black person, it's because of your whiteness. So I have a multiracial whiteness that's propelling me. I'm the black face of white supremacy because I say that no, we should follow laws. The Constitution is a good document for everyone. I think that everybody should be personally responsible for what they're doing. So that in itself, that thinking means I'm actually the black face of white supremacy. And that is actually...
And how do you personally feel about that?
That's,
that it's absurd?
It's absurd, it's crazy, it's actually just abandoning the fact that you don't want to be personally responsible. There's nothing in this country that's preventing you from doing anything. We have the power to reach any level that we want to. And it's about how we feel about ourselves and how we react to the things that happen to us. So if you say, well, I'm experiencing racism, right? But if you understand your value, then you understand there's lots of opportunities out there, and you market those skills somewhere else. So it's still about your personal responsibility. But there's no way that I believe in systemic racism.
It's also about the individual. What kind of kills me about these discussions that we hear from the left so often is that it's the same drumbeat over and over and over again of groupthink. Where is the individual behavior that needs to be ascertained in the classroom, regardless of skin color, regardless of background? That's what we need to be looking at. But it's quota, it's groupthink, it's you're black, I'm white, he's Asian, he's this, you're a woman, you're this, you're a child, you're these huge groups to drive home this philosophy. And the philosophy doesn't work. It's impossible to be anti-racist. I don't even know how that would work. How do you even teach it? And that begs this next question. I think the way that this has been approached by the left, they've kind of overplayed their hand, Donna. And let me explain what I mean. If instead of saying anti-racist, because if everybody's anti-racist, then nobody's racist, right? Or nobody's anti-racist. I don't know, however that goes. It just can't work. But if instead they said, look, every individual person has a prejudice or a bias. I might like chicken noodle soup and you might like a pizza. I might like blue sweaters and you might like, mini skirts. Or who knows? I might like to go swimming and you might like to ski. So I'm prejudiced toward, let's go swimming instead of, right? Or I'm biased. And the bias doesn't necessarily need to be a pejorative, right? So if you took the words prejudice or even bias rather than racist, and you softened the approach on this to say, look, let's watch our prejudices. Let's watch our biases. Let's watch our built-in biases when it comes to race, when it comes to men and women, when it comes to gender, when it comes to children, when it comes. I think that would have been a better approach rather than overplaying the hand of everything's racist. What say you on that?
No, absolutely. Listen, if people were as racist as the left would want you to think, they wouldn't have time to manage their own lives. Most of the time, people don't have that much time to be sick. If I'm worried about everything you do, when am I worried about what I do?
Or what you have to do.
Exactly. And people are not doing that. If someone doesn't acknowledge you, it doesn't mean they're racist. They may have thinking about dinner. They're thinking about getting their kids there. They're thinking about how much time people don't have that much time to sit down there and worry about everything that they need to do to make your life successful. That's what you're responsible for. But this is the narrative that the left wants you to think. They don't want any responsibility for their success. They think that everything that they do and everyone is supposed to be centered around them and their feelings. They don't want to do any of the work. You know, when I was coming up, there used to be these guys that would stand on a milk crate, and they would stand on the street and they would say, the white man is the devil. And we used to walk past them and think, you know what? These guys need to be put in a mental institution. It's something wrong with them. Now those guys are mainstream, and people like me that think, you know what, I need to have personal responsibility are considered fringe.
You know, not only that, the guy on the soapbox is now at a major university writing books, you know, and they're heading the departments and they're pushing CRT.
Exactly.
You know, anyway, that's very nutty. Okay, when we come back from the break with Donna Jackson, Director of Membership Development for Project 21 here in Washington, D.C., we'll pick up on CRT. Now you kind of get an overview of what that means. And we'll get into other issues having to do with race and having to do with suspensions in schools and the Biden administration's education department. I'm Terry Gilberg. This is Timeline with Terry. Be right back.
The principles of liberty, freedom, and the tenets of our constitutional republic are under attack. That's why we are building freedomsquare.com. freedomsquare.com, designed to unite freedom-loving Americans. freedomsquare.com. Freedom lives here.
CTA is conservative media bringing information, education, humor, and entertainment throughout America. We hope you enjoy our politically incorrect programming.
Thank you for watching Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilberg. With me is Donna Jackson of Project 21 here in Washington. We're discussing what this means, CRT. In a couple of shows prior, we were discussing what woke is. When I look, Donna, about down the landscape, I guess, with what the messaging is from the left, they're very good at it, aren't they? Anti-fascism, we get Antifa. We get BLM, Black Lives Matter. Of course, Black Lives Matter. We get racist, and that revs everybody up. I don't want to be racist. Woke. Oh, I want to be awake to all these things. They're very good with acronyms, aren't they?
They're excellent at it. All of their ideas sound great, but when you put them in practice, they're horrible for society. So that's the biggest problem.
All right, let me, I agree with you, and I think the right needs to sort of catch up on the messaging. One of the things that, just as an aside, I thought President Trump did very well was MAGA. I thought, what the heck is MAGA? We'll make America great. And now it's on hats and coffee cups and T-shirts and Christmas ornaments.
Exactly.
And even, I saw some on TP, believe it or not.
Right. Well, I think that the right didn't think that matters. They think that because they have good policies, then that sells itself. They don't understand that institutions like Nike were advertisers. Steve Jobs was advertisers.
Right.
We've been reluctant to go into the culture war because we're afraid that we're not going to be good at it. We're afraid to show personality.
That's true. And we kind of assume that everything is fixed. Okay, we've got our Constitution, we've got the Bill of Rights, we've got the three pillars of the three pillars of our government. We got the fourth estate in the media. It's fixed. We've already looked at these problems, and this can fix it.
No, but you have to sell the idea.
You have to sell the idea that it's already baked in, fixed. True.
Yes.
And the left comes along and creates angst.
Yes.
And upsets the apple cart and creates a dust up. Okay, CRT is taught in school. We hear. But then the left says that it's not taught in school, not the way we have defined it. And so they kick back and say, no, it really isn't, because now they know it's not going over very well. It's leaving a sour taste in the mouths of a lot of parents. But then they flip back again, because I've seen this happen over the last couple of years, say, yes, but kids do need to know about the 1619 Project. Kids go, well, what is that? Well, that was the year slave ships came to our shores. Well, that's when America began, right? Not with Christopher Columbus and not with the Declaration of Independence. How do you respond to that when the New York Times pushes out, for example, and they are a messenger as well, they're a mouthpiece as well, the 1619 Project?
That's crazy. Listen.
Should kids not know about that today?
I think that, kids should learn, kids are already learning about slavery. Kids are already learning about racism. They're already learning about Jim Crow. None of this is about that. This is about micromanaging and controlling the lives of individuals. And the fourth principle of CRT is the nuclear family is where all racism is passed down through. So when they talk about wanting to push the 1619 Project, that's about causing disruption in the family through kids. Destroying the kids, the mental ability of those kids through this project. Listen, slavery has existed for thousands of years. We're not the only ones that's been slaves.
Oh, that's true.
In fact, if you look at America, we're relatively a young nation.
Well, we have really made great attempts and great strides at fixing it.
And the fact that we have a past in slavery is not a bad thing. Because it's happened in Egypt, it's happened in Africa. I mean, I say this all the time. White people weren't chasing black people through the jungle in Africa. That was black people selling other black people into slavery, but they get a pass. Because this is about bitterness. This is about unforgiveness. This is about punishing people that from generations of bitterness that has been passed down from generation through my own people. And I am ashamed of that because we had slavery in Africa. We still have slavery in parts of Africa. And the fact that we have decided that we're going to punish not the people that were responsible and not us who never have been slaves, but we want to make sure that all of their kids are punished And that's why we want the critical race theory groups put people in groups. Because if I'm punishing if I was dragging a 5-year-old child through the street, people would be horrified by it. If I just say, I'm teaching white people something, then I don't notice the harm that I'm doing to an innocent child. And that's why they say, oh, well, no, we're just teaching the past, and they need to know that. Why would kids don't know that they're supposed to hate other races?
Well, the hatred is taught. And this reminds me of a meme somebody sent to me. And I think the picture on it was Clint Eastwood. And he's saying, when he was hit with what is critical race theory, and he started to learn about it. And again, it's a meme. I never owned slaves, and you never picked cotton. So get over it.
And that's exactly
because
right.
we're talking about contemporary times. Right. Right? The past is the past.
I mean, imagine this. Okay, imagine this. Say my grandfather, great-grandfather, killed somebody. And now the police come and say, I'm going to arrest you, Donna, and put you in jail because your grandfather committed murder, 3 generations ago.
So the sin of the grandfather is carried out on the granddaughter.
But how would that be fair? Everybody would be in prison. Everybody would be in prison. For the sins of the past, true. For the sins of the past, somewhere.
Yeah.
Every generation, every race, every nationality has experienced slavery or oppression or something. But you know what that is supposed to do? It's supposed to show you what the human spirit can overcome. Not for you to use it as bitterness and vengeance towards other people. It shows you what you can do. I'm very proud of the fact that I came from a slavery background and was able to rise up to vice president and deputy controller. That says a lot. I'm very proud of the fact that I came from a mother who couldn't read and was impoverished, and she had 5 kids, all of them with college degrees, multiple of them with PhDs.
Bravo.
I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to start from behind and actually achieve the same things that maybe people didn't have to overcome as diverse obstacles as I did.
I understand.
That's something to be proud of.
Well, I could say the same of my background.
At someone because
Irish potato farmers
easier.
And the Great Depression and so forth, and how my parents scraped and raised 7 children. Everybody's got that story.
Everybody
and we
has
should
it.
be proud of it.
And
That's
we should
true.
be proud of
and
it.
we should also be proud, I think, in America of what our nation has done to overcome some of the sins of the past. We should. This is an abomination, truly, of how of slavery in America. I mean, it ripped the country apart during the Civil War. However, we have done something about it. Now the left keeps trying to, raise it, dust it up, raise it as an issue again, and put it in things like CRT and Department of Education. And
I tell people, especially when I talk to white people, I say, and I would tell you, I don't really see race. But I tell people, stop apologizing. You don't owe anything. You haven't done anything wrong. We have opportunities. We all have them. Whether we decide to take advantage of them or not is up to us. But you haven't done anything wrong because someone has to overcome an obstacle. Life is not supposed to be easy.
And life is never fair.
And life is never fair, but it's doable. If you have the ambition, and it doesn't matter for all the people that are sitting there saying, well, you got to apologize, you got to make things easier. You could give every one of those individuals $1 million and a Mercedes, and I guarantee you go back a year later and they'll still be broke and the car won't run. People who want to achieve. The other people who don't are never going to do it, no matter what you do for them.
So, Donna, what happened to the MLK mantra? content of your character, not color of the skin. That goes directly to individual behavior, individual personal responsibility. It goes to achievement. It goes to stepping up individually to the challenges that one has in life. Of course, life isn't fair. There's so many people that have overcome so many challenges, worse off than anybody here in the United States. Anybody. Just look back in history. So whatever happened to that? It's the content of your character that's important. Because if we don't start emphasizing that, we'll never get beyond the color of one's skin. We have to look beyond it. We have to look into the heart. We have to look into the soul. We have to look into that soft underbelly where we live, where our conscience is, and say, is this person, does he have a developed conscience? Is he using his developed conscience? Or maybe he doesn't have a developed conscience, therefore we need to teach him right and wrong, and so forth and so on. Rather than say, okay, well, here we have suspensions based on school quotas, and I got to make this quota because the administration said I had to.
Right.
What happened to Martin Luther King's message? What happened?
The people who teach CRT don't like Martin Luther King either.
I don't think so.
They don't.
They don't like his message, that's true.
They've taken out, he used to be the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Now he's just Martin Luther King because they don't even want you to know that he has that background. He also said,
that's a good point. I don't hear a lot of the Reverend as the adjective before referencing
because
him.
Reverend means you forgive. That means you believe in redemption. And that's why they don't say it. And listen, Martin Luther King, he said, when we're marching for our freedom, don't hold bitterness. Don't distrust every white person because their freedom is tied to ours. He said, we need to see our white brothers and sisters in the same thing as us, and they believe in the same justice we do. And so he said, don't let bitterness take hold of you. But the CRT is all being driven by bitterness. It's all being driven by
Not to mention, in late July, the New York Post ran an article with this headline: Biden administration's school reopening guidelines includes a link to a group promoting critical race theory. So you look up the link, and it's a group called Abolitionist, speaking of which, Abolitionist Teaching Network, advocating for teachers to disrupt whiteness and other forms of oppression. The group also has positions including doing away with all, I'm quoting now, all punitive or disciplinary practices that spirit murder of Black, brown, and indigenous children in classrooms, unquote. Well, I don't know the last time I heard of a bunch of murder of Black, brown, indigenous children right there in the classroom. Can you comment on all that?
Listen,
wow.
They've reduced us to, they dehumanize us as well. They're sitting there saying we're fighting on behalf of Black, brown, white, indigenous people. But they're reduced us to nothing. They've told us that we're not capable of actually sitting down, listening, and understanding basic knowledge. Reasoning is considered something that is whiteness. Being able to stand still and listen and follow direction is considered something that's whiteness. So imagine,
right?
You're an oppressor, but I'm too stupid.
Right.
To get an ID card.
So they continue that narrative.
I'm too stupid.
Continue that mantra.
To understand logic. I'm too stupid to understand analytics. This abolitionist, which they call themselves, is about destroying everything that doesn't line up to what they want.
Not to mention, on the group's website, I had to pull this because I wanted to share it with you, is a list of demands including white educators and white support staff, be given anti-racist therapy. So you have to go into, I don't know, I guess a little, so-called little, some kind of little encampment there at the school and be brainwashed, I suppose, out of your racist mind.
They want other people to accept them for who they were born to be, but then they say we can't accept you for who you were born to be.
Well, that's
somehow,
reverse racism.
Somehow they're okay, but you're not. You gotta not be what you were born to be. And I'm not saying their definition of it, but I'm saying the color of your skin, you had no choice. The color of my skin, I had no choice. Why can't we both be okay?
Every person is unique. We don't have a choice about that. We're born as we're born.
Yeah.
Great discussion on that segment. Let's take a quick break here on Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilbert with Donna Jackson. Stick around.
The principles of liberty, freedom, and the tenets of our constitutional republic are under attack. That's why we are building freedomsquare.com. Freedomsquare.com, designed to unite freedom-loving Americans. Freedomsquare.com. Freedom lives here.
Are you tired of having to grunt, wince, and sigh every time you sit down on the couch? Omekwa Organics has got you covered with the Protected Tea, an organic herbal blend for inflammation, immunity, and heart health. Naturally boost your immune system and reduce stress. So get on up and dance, because you know that Omekwa Organics has got you protected. Visit our link in the description for money off your first bag of Protected Tea.
Welcome back to Timeline with Terry. I'm Terry Gilbert with Donna Jackson of Project 21 here in Washington, talking about CRT, critical race theory. We've been trying to define it and the attitudes behind it. Back to discipline and suspensions, Donna, and the black family and that black household. You were mentioning this a little bit earlier. It's fairly well known in America today that 70% of black households have a single parent in raising the children. Contrast that with Asian American households, 70% have two parents in the household. So if there's one less parent to discipline in a black household, and the school becomes the secondary disciplinary force or parent, can you say that there could be more black students, by extension with these numbers, being disciplined and even suspended than Asians? Without the quotas, do you think that is what's happening in schools? Thus, we get the Obama guidelines, Trump throws them out, and thus we get the Biden picking up the guidelines.
Listen, there's a direct correlation between the education level, the economic level, and two-parent households versus one-parent households. A lot of these kids are crying for discipline. They're not getting it at home. They need it. They need structure.
They know they need it.
They know they need it.
Yeah.
I mean, think about this. I care about you if I say don't run out into the middle of the street.
Indeed.
Because you'll get hit by a car. I don't care about you if I don't discipline you to teach you not to go in the middle of the street to get killed. They want that discipline because kids don't know how to mind their own lives. They don't know how to direct their own lives. That's why discipline is there. You know, you have in a school where the football coach will be the father figure for everybody on that team.
That's true.
And that football coach will discipline those players. He will guide those players. But every one of those players will go and later in their life say, if it wasn't for that coach who showed me right and wrong, I wouldn't have become what I am today. You see it on the college level. You see it even in the pro level. The same situation happens. Mm-hmm. You know, you can't look at a statistic and tell what's going on in that household. But here's the problem. The major problem I have. So the left says, let's discipline based upon a quota system, right? What they don't ever say is, let's look at the programs that we created that incentivize single parent households.
Bingo.
They never do that because, you know what, when their war on poverty was a war for poverty. They created more of it because you know what? Social workers and government workers don't work themselves out of a job. So they create more of it. So what did they do? They told women, we'll give you benefits, but only if you don't have that father in the household. Only if that parent is not there. If you look at the welfare system, it actually created the what we have in the Black community, and they're trying to do the same thing all over.
An
they're trying
incentive
to
not to
destroy
have a father there, not to have a husband father there, an incentive not to go to work, an incentive just to wait for the welfare check with no man in the household.
And they're trying to increase this on this new package.
Yes, I see that.
You know, they're taking away work from the child care subsidies they're planning on giving. So they're trying to make people more dependent on the government. So what we've done in the Black community, right, is substitute the government for the father.
For the father figure.
But that has had a terrible effect. And African Americans already knew that. You know, there was groups called Promise Keepers. I don't know if you remember that.
I do
There was
remember
Promise
that.
Keepers. There was the Million Man March.
Remember that
And both
too.
of those groups said, listen, fathers, take care of your family. You need to stand up and be a man and take responsibility. Don't abandon these kids, because if you're a child and the guy that brought you here that's supposed to love you doesn't love you, right? He's not there, then of course you're hurting. And when you're hurting, you're gonna hurt other people. That's why we have crime. That's why we have discipline issues.
So Donna,
because it's pain.
So where are the churches promoting? You would think that, I mean, the churches aren't blind. They look out, they see the single family parent. Where is their promotion of fathers get back in the household, have the responsibilities, consequences of your actions? You fathered a child, be the father to the child. Where is that from the churches, from the pulpit?
Unfortunately, I'll tell you, there's a lot of churches, Black churches, I'm speaking Black churches, that have become a little bit more than extension to the liberal party. They're teaching more about, like, make sure you vote Democrat, make sure you follow these policies. And actually the gospel in terms of what real faith is not being taught there. I don't know if you remember, but Kamala Harris not too long ago blasted a message in the Black churches in Virginia to vote for. Right. They've become a little more, and the people that are actually getting the funds, that are getting the mic, that are able to speak, are the ones like you have Jesse Jackson and Al Sharptons, who are getting paid to make sure that we keep the problem in the communities that we have.
It's just fostering the problem. Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. We did a survey. We did an analysis
at Project 21.
At Project 21, and we found out that the reason why most people had got stopped by the police was safety belts. So we said, if we just eliminate the police department from being able to stop people for safety belts, that should be a good thing, right? You won't have the confrontation. You won't have the so-called police, gunning down
Stronghold.
innocent. But
right.
You would think, oh yeah, all of these
And how
civil
did that
rights
go
groups.
over?
No. We don't want you to get rid of that. See, a lot of individuals in Black communities, unfortunately, and even in the pulpit, want the issue. They don't want the problem to go, because they make money. It's a lot
because
of
there's
money.
value in having
Because there's
the
value
issue.
in poverty. There's value in having those issues, but it doesn't change anything.
I'd like you to comment about this, because I read this a lot. Educators and sociologists arguing either way, based on percentages of ethnicities in America. For example, the Black population is about 13%. Hispanics, they say about 16 to 17%. White population, just white, about 60%. Maybe that's come down a little bit. White and Hispanic and Latino. In other words, white with Hispanic and Latino, about 77%. So with dealing with quotas to fill, there simply are more whites to choose from. So if one were to deal with the quota, you could say, well, and this can be argued on both sides. There needs to be more whites suspended because there's just more whites around. Of course, it depends on where you're talking about. You're talking about the Deep South, you're talking about North or South Dakota, it depends. But they argue both sides. I often hear, well, why are these extra programs for the black population? After all, they're only 13%. Or, well, yes, look at all this whiteness. I mean, you put whiteness with Latinos and Hispanics, you have 77%. There's a lot of whiteness out there. What is your response when educators and sociologists argue back and forth on these percentages?
I think that's we're so far from what we really need to be talking about, which is all of us are humans. All of us have the same brain, have the same ability, and we shouldn't be judging people based upon the color of their skin. I mean, these programs, first of all, I'm a capitalist. I believe that we should all be trying to work towards our own success. I don't see a lot of these programs that they put in place actually doing what they're supposed to do. They always have unintended consequences. They put all these social programs that are heavily directed at African Americans, and actually we get more of what they're supposed to get rid of. I mean, it doesn't really matter. What we should be talking about is what the United States was founded on. That is that anybody who wants to be something can, that everybody should take personal responsibility for. We shouldn't just look at a statistic overall, because there are people who are wealthy on paper, but if you look at their lifestyles, they're not. There are people who are poor on paper, but if you look at their lifestyles, they're very comfortable, they're very rich. It depends. And so when you look at this overall statistic and you're making judgments about what programs, I think you miss the whole point. And that is the fewer interventions that we have from government interference. And the more we allow people to be able to showcase their own ability and develop their own ability, and we give them the ammunition and say, listen, I'm giving you the information, I'm not going to do the work for you, but I'm showing you what is possible. I'm giving you the tools, then you can do that. Because everybody should have the right to develop their own path. Well, and we shouldn't be dictating paths for people.
I agree. And when I read things like this, I think this is, again, the statistics go right to the group rather than individual behavior, individual goals and joys and
ambitions.
And ambitions and what do you want, short-term, long-term goals. What do you want to, what is your purpose in life? What are you here to do? What do you think you're here to do? What eventually makes you happy? Rather than, well, you're in this group, you're 77% if we lump the Hispanics with the whites and the Hispanic and Latinos with the whites. If not, it's at 60%. And if the African American community is only 13%, well, you don't get because there's less of you. It's again that group thinking in group think.
Right, and not in human terms. We're all, I wish we get to a place where we're just all considered Americans. I'm an American, you're an American. It doesn't matter the outfit I'm wearing, we're just Americans. And this is what the American dream has available for you, based upon the Constitution, based upon all of our laws. This is what you can do as an American, not as a Black American. I say I'm a Christian first. I'm a woman, a mother, all those things are last. I'm Black at the very, I wouldn't know I was Black if people didn't keep reminding me.
Well, isn't that the case? Isn't that the case? We're not looking beyond skin color. We want to see Donna. We want to see Terry. We want to see Joe. We want to see Mike. We want to see Susie or Ben or whomever. We want to know what's here, what's inside, and what's here. And what your dreams are. What have you figured out what you're meant to do in the world? You know, this isn't very much taught in K through 12 in public school. You can take little Johnny and say, well, Johnny, you know, you're 8th grade, you're going to enter high school pretty soon. What do you think you're supposed to be doing in life? Because if you're going to be an astronaut or you want to be a preacher or you want to be, I don't know, a deep sea diver, you might want to take these courses. You might
Right.
want to start prepping that. And certainly these questions have to be asked in college. But K through 12, it's not really, the big life purpose questions aren't really put out there from junior high on. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
It's sad.
It's sad, and it's all focused on, well, what color are you? And you know, that's a horrible thing too.
That just
because
breeds.
people make the assumption that, oh, well, they're white, so their life was easier. No, they may have had a harder situation in life than you did, but you assume that their life is easier because of the color of their skin. It doesn't matter. It's just as painful if I get cut and if you get cut. It's not less painful because I got cut and then you got cut. It's still the same.
Blood is blood, right?
Blood is blood.
Blood is blood. In the short time we have left, quickly, how has CRT impacted family life? And I think we're down to maybe a couple of minutes.
It's destroying. You know, it has people in black communities. The largest childbirths are mixed marriages. Now it has kids being worried and questioning their own family members, and that's awful. That happened actually in my family.
Really?
I had a niece whose teacher told her that all white people hated black people. And then in her class, she said, well, that can't be true because I have a grandfather that's white and my grandmother is black and they love each other and they love me. So not all white people hate black people. You have to look at that individual may hate someone, but not everybody.
Do you think America's come a long way, as they say, a long way, baby, before the entrance of this CRT stuff?
Oh, absolutely.
I do too. I do too. And now we're taking 2 steps backwards.
Yeah.
Creating the angst all over again.
Yeah, all over again.
Yeah.
It's all fictitious.
You're really delightful to talk to, Donna. Final thoughts. We're down to about 30 seconds.
Look, when people call you racist, just tell them I'm still right. I'm righteous. That's what I tell
Righteous,
people.
not racist.
I'm righteous,
Then maybe
not
that's what
racist.
the right needs to put on bumper stickers more, because we don't do a very good
We
job
don't
with,
do a good job of it.
messaging. Yeah, maybe we should put on our creative hats and start thinking of good messages to counter some of this. Because they're ahead of the game, and the right always plays reactive ball rather than proactive ball.
I absolutely 100% agree.
You're delightful to talk to. I'm glad you came into the
Thank
studio
you.
to
I
share
was
some
so
time with
happy
us.
that you had me.
Good. We'll have you back, okay, Donna?
Absolutely.
Donna Jackson with Project 21, and I'm Terry Gilberg. This has been Timeline with Terry. We'll see you on another episode of this show.